Today's webinar focuses on closing the tribal connectivity gap through the NTIA's Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. I am your moderator, Ashley Nguyen. For the agenda, our first presenter, Chris Salemme, will kick off by covering the NTIA Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. Following him, Mitch Koep will cover the use case experience, and our final speaker, Gregg Tome, will go over Airspan's technology and solution. Finally, we'll go into a Q&A session before closing out the webinar. We have a lot to cover, so start us off.
Thank you, Ashley. And hello, everyone, and thank you. And I want to give a big thanks to Ashley for pulling this together. She does a lot of the legwork here, so thank you, and thank you to the other presenters. And to you all who are joining us today in what we hope will be another educational session on the National Telecommunications Information Administration's Tribal Broadband Connectivity Grants Program. My name is Chris Salemme, and I'm the Government and Strategic Affairs Liaison for Airspan Networks here in Washington, D.C. I have two other guests joining me who will be speaking after me as well, as Ashley has pointed out. Today will be our second webinar on NTIA's 3 grant programs, all of which were established and funded by Congress under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. These grants programs are expected to release funds quickly, which means that applicants must be prepared to move expeditiously through the submission process. So to begin, let me just quickly run through the 3 programs here because there have been some updates to all of them. So let's start with the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program. That's the $285 million grant program for historically Black colleges and universities. NTIA just the other day has announced, they are accepting completed applications by December 1st of this year. Also, as we talked about in last month's webinar and discussed, NTIA's Broadband Infrastructure Program. That is a $288 million grant program that's being made available for the deployment of broadband infrastructure in underserved communities, namely rural areas. That application process is coming to a close on August 17th. So time is running out here for you guys to start getting things moving here. So let's jump into the program we are talking to today about. That is the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. To begin, and I'll start with this. All applications for the Tribal Broadband Community Connectivity Program are due by 11:59 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on September 1st. You must submit a completed application using one method. Please do not submit half by mail and half by email. It's important also that you have a sam.gov registration as you work through the application process. If you already have a sam.gov application registration in place, please make sure it is active. If it is inactive, it could take up to 30 days to reactivate. So sam.gov, please make sure you're registered. Talk about, for starters, the grant program description, which is pretty simple and straightforward. We're looking at $1 billion grant program with the goal of providing funding for the deployment and adoption of broadband services on tribal lands, including telehealth, remote learning, and telework. These $1 million in grants will be awarded to expand access for broadband in the telehealth realm, again, in remote learning. Let me jump into exactly what they're going to be looking at primarily in this first batch, because there are 2 points and specifically they'll be looking at, but let's jump into the infrastructure deployment phase. What they'll be looking at and what can be incorporated into that bucket. Construction, improvement, and replacement, extension, or acquisition of facilities and telecommunications equipment, including infrastructure for backhaul, middle, and last mile networks. They'll also be looking and taking into consideration long-term leases of facilities, planning, feasibility, and sustainability studies, engineering and network design, including mapping for broadband infrastructure, permitting, and work-related environmental and historical and cultural reviews. And lastly, workforce training. The other area of interest they'll be looking at in the other bucket is use projects and broadband adoption. That number that they will be looking at is $50,000 to $2.5 million. And that money that they will be giving out will be, again, we are looking at distance learning, telehealth, digital inclusion efforts, and broadband adoption activities, such as providing free or reduced cost broadband service and preventing disconnection of existing broadband services. I'll elaborate a little bit more on that bucket. They'll also be looking at acquiring broadband related equipment, instrumentation, networking capability, hardware, software, and other digital technology for broadband services, telehealth, and remote education. Also, if you'll be providing affordable broadband programs, including providing free or reduced cost broadband services and preventing disconnects of existing broadband service, as well as providing digital training, education, technology support, outreach awareness programs, including web-based resources, as well as public computer centers, public Wi-Fi networks, broadband in public housing, improvement of broadband services and equipment in schools. Also, implementing affordable broadband programs that facilitate greater access to broadband services, devices, equipment, and again, the prevention of disconnections of existing broadband services. For a larger list, you can obviously go to the NOFO. So again, the two buckets that we're going to be looking at that NTIA will be taking into consideration for the 1 million grants, 1 million in grant funding will be deployment projects. Broadband infrastructure is one. That money and that funding will range between $1 million and $5 million. The second will be use projects and broadband adoption. That range again will be $50,000 to $2.5 million. Now let's jump to eligible entities. This is pretty straightforward here, folks, but let's go over it quickly. We're looking at a tribal government, tribal college, university, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, tribal organizations, Alaska Native Corporation, and again, more tribal governments are also encouraged to join. How will this distribution look to these entities? Well, NTIA will allocate up to $500,000 to each federally recognized tribe. Also, at least $30 million will be allocated for the assistance of Native Hawaiians. And again, to reiterate, which I will throughout this whole time, sam.gov is where you need to go to have a registration set up. Let's move down now to priorities. What is the regional approach? Well, NTIA encourages regional consortiums to submit applications on behalf of multiple tribal partners. Affordability. Affordability is an important factor here for NTIA, and on its face is as straightforward as it sounds. Affordable broadband programs. How cost effective are you? Jumping to the next bullet, cost sharing. NTIA will not give additional consideration to applications containing non-federal cost share. Let's look at the application criteria. We'll start with resolutions of consent. Eligible entities must submit a resolution of consent from each tribal government upon whose lands the infrastructure will be deployed. There will be an opportunity during the application review process to cure missing resolutions of consent. Jumping down to certification of served and underserved status. NTIA will permit tribes to self-certify the unserved status of proposed service areas. And moving down one to sub-guarantees, this is important in an area where we've seen a lot of questions. An eligible entity may enter into a contract with a sub-guarantee, including non-tribal entities, as part of its use of grant funds. So who does that incorporate? That means consulting firms who might help with the granting of the application process, or an outside contractor to help with deployment of the physical infrastructure. Please keep in mind that the costs associated with preparing grants for the application will not exceed 5% of the award. And again, as I said before in the beginning, applications are due September 1st. Let's jump down to our last area here, evaluation criteria. This is important because it is a point-based criteria. we'll start with the largest of them all here. Project purpose and benefits. I'll list through a few of them, but again, I encourage you to go back to the NTIA NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, to read through all of this in a little bit more detail. Given that we are tight on time here, I'll list through some of the more important ones. So, project purpose and benefits. It's number one. Level of need on tribal land. That is 35 points here. How will they break down the level of need? Well, they'll look at considering the total number of households, businesses, and anchor institutions that lack access to 25/3 service, 25 down to 3 up, and or lack access entirely. They will also consider the percentage of end users that are below 150% of the poverty line. They will consider the total number of jobs estimated to be created throughout the project. And then affordability of services offered. Let's jump down to 2 here, project viability. That is 30 points. Technical approach and related network planning, capacity, and performance falls into that bucket. That will reward you 20 points. Again, here we go onto the technical approach piece. Favorable consideration of construction projects that are capable of completion within 1 year will be taken into consideration. So again, 1 year period here will win you some extra consideration and extra points. Network speeds are also important, as we can all imagine. 25/3 gives you 3 points. Between 25/3 and 120, 120 down, 20 up gives you 7. 100 to 120 down up gives you 9 points, and 100 gives you 10 points. And then strength of the application's organizational capability is also taken into consideration, so please keep that in mind. 3, and our last one, project budget and sustainability, 25 points totaling. Reasonableness of the budget is 10 points. Sustainability of the project is 15 points. Projects which utilize interoperable interfaces for 5G or deploy fiber will get you 8 points, excuse me. And then to conclude the review process. This will also, obviously, this application process will go through a number of hands, but as you see here on the slide, we've given you 2 names of folks at NTIA who will, Adam Geisler, who is a National Tribal Government Liaison. He handles programmatic inquiries, and then grant management inquiries also is Nicola Bell. She is with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. She will be helping out as well. So with that, that is my portion of this slide. I'm happy to answer questions when we get through with the next 2 presenters here, and I'll pass the baton over to over to Mitch, who will be talking a little bit more about what takes place in the field. Ashley, thank you. Go back in. I think we can kick it to Greg in the meantime. This should show us why we desperately need more broadband deployment and money funneled into areas like South Dakota, where Mitch currently is.
Thanks a lot, Ashley. Thanks a lot, Chris. And thanks to all of you who are attending today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join the webinar. My name is Gregg Tome, and I am the sales director for the eastern half of the USA with Airspan Mimosa. I've been with Airspan for 13 years now. And what I'm going to do is just take a few minutes to provide an overview of Airspan Mimosa and our complete end-to-end solutions that make Airspan this perfect fit for the tribes as they are applying for NTIA funding. So when I first joined Airspan, we were cutting our teeth in rural deployments. I remember we had a 700 megahertz radio that was broadcasting, and out over 15 miles, we were able to get 1 to 2 to 3 megabits of service, and it was mind-blowing. And that took a lot of work to do. So we've been cutting our teeth ever since then. And if you fast forward now to what we're doing with 4G and 5G, it is incredible. And it's just that when you think about speeds that are available now, it really is amazing that you don't necessarily have to use fiber for certain links. And with our acquisition of Mimosa, we definitely have that capability. I'll explain that in a little bit. And we also worked with T1 service providers in deploying our 2.5 gigahertz radios over the last several years. So it really is no accident that Airspan is in a pretty perfectly position to handle what the tribes need for the 2.5 gigahertz networks that they will be applying for through the NTIA funding. And in fact, as Mitch was going to present, and hopefully we get him back, we are deploying this 2.5 network in the lower Brule tribe reservation in South Dakota. So hopefully we get some more details on that. The thing about the tribal deployments and NTIA funding is there really is a need for speed, as I call it, given that the time to deploy these units, I believe, Chris, is around 12 months that you really have to get everything up and running. That's not a lot of time, as we know, right? So I'm going to go over a few products and requirements and show you how we do fit the need for speed, as I call, with these particular networks. A little bit more on Airspan for those of you who don't know. Airspan is a tier 1 USA-based company with global accounts and global reach. We do have offices all over the world. We have deployments all over the globe, but our headquarters is based here in USA. And that's where I'm coming from you today. It's a little rainy out today, so it's not so sunny. But again, being a USA-based company is really important as you apply for these funds, and also for you as a customer. You know you can reach us anytime here in the USA. We have CSEs based here in the USA. You can set up a meeting with us here in the USA. You don't have to travel halfway around the globe just to meet with us. It's usually just a few hour plane ride or whatever. And we do notice that a lot of people tend to visit us in the winter time due to our positioning here in Florida. As I was saying, you know, we have been in business for 20 years, and we're currently the 4th largest LTE OEM in the world. And the 3 above us, again, are not US-based companies, but we are. Another key point to mention is that 2 years ago, Airspan acquired Mimosa, another USA-based company, by the way, with 5 gigahertz point-to-point and point-to-multipoint backhaul and point-to-multipoint radios. They're located in Santa Clara, California. Of course, we're one company, but we also have a headquarters out there for meeting with people who are on the West Coast, let's say. And then if you think about how we acquired this company with these backhaul and point-to-multipoint radios, we can now offer a full end-to-end solution from the LTE 4G radios all the way out to the point-to-point, point-to-multipoint radios. And we even have an EPC software stack nowadays that is really affordable. So you given those 3 factors together, that also falls under the need to speed requirement, because you could source the whole end-to-end solution from one vendor. Really important, because you save time on equipment delivery and logistics, which sometimes get a little time consuming. And also, in conjunction with the Mimosa acquisition, we were able to set up a sales channel here in the USA, and we work really hard with our distributors in keeping them well stocked. So another need for speed requirement is we usually have stock when you need it, and that's going to be a big part of this funding deployment as you go on. So let's take a quick look at our 4G LTE product portfolio. On the top, you can see the mini macros we have. Again, these are in band 41, but we also provide them in band 48. So, you know, a tribe may not be able to use band 41 in certain locations, or they may want to reserve the 41 for mission critical applications, so they can designate those 2.5 radios for those use cases and use the band 48 radios for other use cases and connectivity. That's an all outdoor design. The RF and the baseband are all in one radio, so that cuts down on time for deployment. You don't need any EPC at the bottom of the tower. You simply need power, backhaul connection, and you are in business. Down below are the air speeds. These are our micro radios, if you will. So we can use these in band 41 and band 48 as well to infill areas where the mini macros can't reach. Or again, you can cut costs, which is really meaningful here. If you have a small area where you only have a few subscribers, you may not need a whole mini macro radio to cover that area. So we can infill and put a smaller a smaller powered micro radio to cover those people. They both put out the same kind of throughput. We support dual carrier and carrier aggregation, which can give you 200 plus megabits. So this is also important. Chris, you noted the levels of speed and the points that are awarded for such. So we definitely fit the need for speed there. And then on the right side, we have our AirSpot. This is an outdoor UE or CPE device that we use for fixed wireless access. These go on homes or businesses or wherever you need that connectivity to go. So the combination of these radios definitely fits in with the need for speed, as I call it. Right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Mimosa products. Now these are important because the need for speed comes in again because we don't have to lay fiber down to get these long distance backhaul links, which quite frankly the reservations are going to have a lot of that to deploy because these are big geographical areas that they need to cover for the most part. I've been to one of the reservations. It definitely holds true there. So this is a typical deployment of Mimosa with your point-to-point backhaul. These radios can backhaul 1+ gigabit at the moment. I say that because we're going to beef that product up, but that's another point we'll make later on. And then over here to the point-to-multipoint architecture, those radios can pump out about 700 megabits aggregate to customers. So again, if you have some customers that need a higher SLA and you have that line of sight, we're all for that. We're all for hybrid networks with the equipment we have, and you don't have to deploy LTE in those scenarios. If you have line of sight, you can cut costs tremendously with this gear. This gear is easy to deploy and easily cost effective, as you would see if you get the pricing on this. It's quite amazing. And so here we have just a little bit more on Mimosa. It gives you an idea of the distances you can cover. The top is our B11, which is 11 gigahertz licensed spectrum. Mitch is actually using one of these point-to-points out in the Rosebud Reservation. He's using it for the jail connected to the courthouse. So on those mission critical applications, you may want to consider using a band 11 radio, 11 gigahertz radio. And of course, as you move down, there's all these different variants, and it just depends on the network requirement at that particular location. And you can adapt that way of which one to use, cut costs here and there. And then really cost effective is our C5X family. On the C5X can be used as point-to-point actually, or point-to-multipoint. And with these screw-on antennas, you can adjust as you move out per mile or per distance. You can adjust the dish there and the screw-on horns to accommodate the distance that you want to cover. Again, these radios are super affordable and very reliable. We have thousands of these all deployed all over the world, and they are very reliable and sturdy. So if you look at these products, you look at the LTE products, you take into consideration our EPC software stack. I mean, it's a true end-to-end solution here. So all of that is really, really important. And the other point to make here is that, as we know, laying fiber is extremely costly. And now we can get 1.7 gigabits on these wireless, backhaul links. Don't have to lay that fiber perhaps in certain places. So really, really cost effective and time consuming. The time to lay down fiber is, as you all know, very, very time consuming. These links easy to put up, easily to get running, so you can save time and cost on that too. In closing, let me just say one thing. I've been out to the reservation with Mitch, and the tribes are looking at this as not just an opportunity to build a really reliable network, but they're looking at this as a way to change the life of everyday people that live on the reservation. So they're looking at these networks to enhance their well-being, enhance their schools, enhance their banking system. They're looking at these to enhance the irrigation system for farming. So it really is an honor to be part of the existing network that's running now at Lower Brule, and definitely an honor to be considered and hopefully be the vendor of choice for the tribes that continue with this NTI funding.
And if I could just pile in, and just to piggyback off Gregg's point here, which he eloquently laid out. Again, as I pointed out in my slides, the NTIA is going to look favorably upon proposals, applications that are deploying within the 1-year time frame. And if you're going to consider fiber, well, you're going to have to build in a lot more time than you would if we're going to deploy Mimosa solutions or products, as Gregg pointed out here. So there's a lot, obviously. Airspan, we optimize as much as we can using current infrastructure to reach as many as possible. And we understand there are folks off the grid in some of these reservations. So it is tough, and topography obviously has to be taken into consideration here. You all know that who are listening here, coming from some of these very remote areas. It's important, but again, our Mimosa product line has the capabilities of doing so. And I also just think it's important to point out that Airspan can help train up some of the managers on the reservations and folks who need it going forward. So it's not just deployment and then, so long, thanks for everything. We're still there to help and build that lasting relationship.
Great. Thank you guys for that. I do have Mitch on the line, so I will move to his slide so he can give you guys a little bit more of the use case experience. Mitch?
Hi, I'm Mitch Koep with Better Wireless. I apologize, I'm out in the field and we have an issue with broadband, so I had to dial in. One of the things that we find, or that I find, going to the different reservations are the challenges. We have the accessibility to high-speed internet, the affordability of the service, and the reliability and performance, as well as topology to get the service out to people. What we found in some of the areas was the affordability. They would charge anywhere from $90 a month on up, and the performance was poor. They couldn't run more than one Zoom call at a time for the kids that were in school. So what we did is we came up with the wireless solutions. We settled on the Airspan LTE system for the Band 41 for the tribes that had the 5 that they were able to receive during the tribal window. One of the reasons we chose the Airspan was because it's non-proprietary, meaning you don't have to use just Airspan equipment with it. It'll work with any 3G GDP equipment on the market, which gives you the ability to spend as little as $100 per user unit that goes in the household, all the way up to $700 or $800, depending on what speeds and what bells and whistles you want. The other good thing was that the Airspan Mimosa products come with live support. You can dial in and get to an engineer when you really need one, rather than a lot of the other companies just doing email support. We're currently testing the Mimosa backhaul in Rosebud for the court system to police station link for their data and their body cams and vehicle cam uploads. The other thing that we find with the Airspan is it's just set it up, program it, and forget it, because it just works. It's the same equipment that Sprint uses worldwide, and it's just been a phenomenal product, and the support has been fantastic. The other thing that we do is we also train tribal members, or teach them how to maintain, program, install, and also certify them in tower climbing, and also how to expand their network so it can continually grow, as well as providing about a 10-year support package with them, to where we can keep people trained and train them and teach them more to get them all the way up to network administrator levels. My first project that I did with tribes was Lower Brule. Lance Wiggy contacted me from Lower Brule. He's a superintendent of public schools. And what we found in Lower Brule is we started the project at the end of August last year and completed covering 85% of the reservation on 1/19 of 2021. Currently, there's 85% coverage, 262 tribal members and school kids connected, and we used category 4 UEs, which gives us the ability to do up to 90 megabit download and up to 20 megabits of upload. That changes with the different categories of end user units that you use. Currently, we're looking at deploying the 1215s, so we'll be able to get up to 200 megabits of download and about 40 megabytes of upload. They're also able now to automate the irrigation systems for the reservation, for the farming, and also the grain elevator. We've increased the connectivity for the tribal programs. They were roughly 5 to 8 megabyte download with the current provider on reservation, to where each one of the programs connected to the new network is able to run about 90 to 100 megabits of download, as well as VoIP telephone systems now, to where they can save costs on phones as well. And again, this is using the Airspan and again testing the Mimosa products. And I guess that will kind of end things, other than I'm working with the Rosebud Reservation. We've got 1,400 square miles we're laying out, and currently working with the Cass Lake Ojibwa Band in Minnesota. And that will end it for me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mitch. That's Mitch Koep from A Better Wireless. So that brings us to near the end of this webinar. We're going to go into Q&A. Thank you, Greg, Mitch, and Chris. But before we get into Q&A, up on the screen, I have some useful links, such as the program application site, entity registration, tribal directories, and the broadband needs map for your convenience. One thing I would need to know is the map might not be 100% accurate, but it is a helpful starting point. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive into Q&A. I just want to thank you for taking the time to type in your questions. The first question I have here is, if in the RF realm, is there, do the 2.5 gigahertz licenses come under this tribal bucket of NTIA program?
Yes, my understanding is, I believe so, yes.
Does the Airspan 2.5 gigahertz product do LTE CA?
The Airspan equipment is fully capable in band 41 of carrier aggregation.
Okay, next question. Are the projects that have been commenced included costs expended, already planning? Are those eligible for funding?
So there's pre-approval. You'll have to put that into the application, and then they'll take that into consideration. NTIA will, obviously, in your final application that's submitted. Costs already incurred, yes.
We know we went over a bit here with our webinar session, so we apologize for the technical difficulties, as well as running longer than expected. I don't see any additional questions here, so we can close out the webinar. I would like to ask Greg, Chris, and Mitch if you have any final words to do so.
I would just quickly note that, again, NTIA's announced a date on the Connecting Communities pilot program for December 1st for those who are interested on this call, and don't hesitate to reach out, as we'll be reviewing the NOFO and moving forward on that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and I will be posting the recording of this webinar as a follow-up email to you. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.